We now have a far-packed panel discussion on the topic strengthening government IT backbone through modern and future-proof single platform. For this, once again, may I request Mr. Mohammad Ujale, Senior Assistant Editor, ET Government, to moderate the session. Over to you, Ujale.
Hello and welcome to National Workflow Summit being organized by ET Government and ServiceNow. In this special panel discussion, focus on strengthening government IT backbone through modern and future-proof single platform. We will explore the potential of integrated platform for improving public service delivery and internal efficiency for the government organizations. To lead the discussion, I am joined by Mr. B. Sundar, Special Secretary, Department of Information Technology, Electronics and Communication, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Vijay Rajmohan, Director, Digital Agriculture, Department of Agriculture Cooperation and Farmer Welfare, Government of India, Ms. L. Ramadevi, Director, Emerging Technologies and Officer on Special Duty, Department of IT, Electronics and Communication, Government of Telangana, Dr. Lalta Mauna, Chief Information Officer and Joint Secretary, Department of Information and Communication Technology, with Government of Mizoram, Mr. Manpreet Singh, Senior Consultant and State E-Governance Mission Head, Government of Punjab, Mr. Bob Osborne, Chief Technology Officer, Global Government ServiceNow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Let me begin with Mr. Rajmohan by asking you what we have observed, Mr. Rajmohan, that Government of India has undertaken the National Digital Platform Initiative involving various ministries. As many as 10 key ministries are part of this initiative to ensure their diverse application and schemes are integrated over one common platform. As a public sector technology leader, I would like to understand from you, how do you look at the concept of platformization, wherein you create one single console and you try to provide different kind of government services from one particular platform?
As far as agriculture is concerned, we are in the process of laying down a digital blueprint for the agriculture sector of the country. A task force has been constituted and they have given recommendations. We have put it in the public domain and we have received comments. We are still receiving some comments. So basically what will happen is this leverages the data which government has, and then based on this data, how we can provide better services to our farmers and how we can create common standards and bring all the data available in different silos of the government over this platform, and then provide better services to our farmers. We are focused on this. We are thus creating this India digital ecosystem for agriculture, and we are also creating a national federated farmers database, and we are also collaborating for proof of concepts with various national level agri-tech players, FPOs, various kind of categories. We have given open invitation call, and then we will develop proof of concepts by taking sample data from this. And then once this MOU is on a pro bono basis, and once we experiment this, maybe after a year, we will scale up the successful POCs at the national level. So ultimately, this is going to benefit our farmers and India, as it is happening in other developed countries across the world. We will leverage this data and provide better services to our farmers. This is our vision and mission.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you again. And now I'll go to Mr. B. Sundar. Mr. B. Sundar, what we observe even in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, there is already, a kind of single integrated platform where, like MeSeva, where a lot of government services are being offered to the people. Would you like to share based on your experience as to how do you look at the concept of a platform for delivering public service?
Yes. MeSeva was originally started to bring services onto a common platform. This was way back in 2011. And in 2015, after bifurcation 2, we continued with this journey of having services on a common platform called the MISEVA. But my observation here is that uh, the departments have huge innovation potential, and one department wanting to bring all the services onto a common platform, there was an issue. So along with MISEVA, we had simultaneous existence of services from the Common Services Center, services from Panchayat Raj, services from registration and stamps, which are also giving simultaneous services, but in a makeshift attempt to provide services onto a common platform, all we did was to create a kind of a link for those services from the MISEVA portal. And integrating those services code by code, line by line, process by process was a time-consuming affair which we didn't venture into. So, for the citizen, having a common platform, it is extremely useful from the citizen's point of view. But workflow-wise, cost-wise, it can be quite expensive from the e-government perspective. And cash-strapped we are, as most governments are. Most of us did not venture into doing this backward integration because we let it exist side by side. And as a result, today we have multiple platforms and only with those platforms with which the citizen is familiar, for example, MISEVA, and from the last 1 or 2 years, we also have the Grama Sachivalayam, Grama Ward online platform where the services are delivered to the citizens in a hybrid. Like we have MISEVA also existing, where you have a private sector franchisee providing all the 500 plus services. And you also have the Grama Sachivalayam, which provides the services in an offline mode. That is, it is targeted at those rural households, at those semi-urban households, which do not have access to, or who do not have the time and inclination to visit a center and avail of their services. So, in a nutshell, from the citizen's perspective, having a common platform is a good idea. But from the operations perspective, in the software side, we were balked by the huge expenses, and our government, and including Telangana, we did not venture it. That is my knowledge so far.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you, Mr. Sundar. Again, I'll go to Ms. Ramadevi. Ma'am, what we observe even in Telangana, what Mr. Sundar was saying that having an integrated platform is really a good thing. And there are a lot of benefit for the ultimate beneficiary, which is a citizen. But when you have an integrated platform, this could be a distributed, if that could be even in a distributed architecture, or maybe one particular department having their own integrated platform for a particular service, for a particular government services. But among all, what we have realized that to understand the pattern, the need of the people, to understand the data, you have to use some level of modern technology. I mean, it could be AI, machine learning, it could be data analytics and all. Since you take care of emerging technology part with Government of Telangana, I would like to understand from you, how do you look at the concept of, I mean, the role of emerging technology while any government organization is thinking to opt for platform type of a system to provide public service delivery?
Well, thank you, Jale. Since you asked me about emerging technologies, I get very excited when somebody asks questions on that, because I head the emerging technologies wing in Government of Telangana, and we are really working with all these exciting technologies, AI, blockchain, IoT, cloud, and so on. So, in fact, we are actually, Telangana is the first state actually to set up a separate division or a wing called Emerging Technologies Wing, where our main, it's a kind of twin objective that we have. One is, how do we develop the ecosystem within the state for these technologies to grow? The companies come here and, offer the solutions. The second one is, how do we leverage these technologies? It could be AI, ML, it could be blockchain, for the government, either it could be in terms of improving the internal efficiency, improve service delivery to citizens, and so on. I'll give, I mean, 2 to 3 examples I would share I like to share with you. One is we are using AI ML in a very innovative way. One solution, usually for if you're a retired person, and to avail government pension, it's really a cumbersome process. You have to go to a bank, or you have to actually go to a government department or to a Me Seva center and apply, submit an application. So we developed a smartphone-based application wherein that a person can simply take a photograph from his smartphone, and AI ML algorithm immediately identifies if you're Ujale who is applying for a pension. It immediately identifies that you are Mr. Mohammed Ujale and you are eligible for pension. So immediately the pension, it actually correlates with the database and immediately disperses a pension. It's one of the successful applications where we're using AI ML algorithms, facial authentication. It's like we are moving one step beyond a contactless service, paperless service, jurisdiction-free services, and so on. So that's one classic example. The second one is we have implemented the same technology in road transport services, where citizens will have to go to a road transport authority RTO office if you have to register your license, or even to or your registration of a vehicle. You need to go to the RTO department. Though all the processes are automated, but still you have to go there. So we are trying to avoid that. We again use the same technology that I mentioned earlier, that you can just simply take a photograph and send it across to an application which actually validates what you have entered and so on. So we are leveraging all these advanced technologies to improve service delivery to the citizen. Coming back to your platformization, I think this is the way to go, because last decade or so, we have seen in the private sector too, companies coming out with huge platforms, and so is the case with the government. So these platforms actually bring together the entire ecosystem. It could be your partners, it could be your citizens, it could be your IT service companies, which actually leads to opening up new opportunities for business models. It enables sharing of data, which again leads to developing of innovative products and solutions, and it creates a kind of a network effect when you have these platforms. Right. So realizing this, we are actually in fact Vijay Mohan, I think he also spoke about this. We recently launched a project called AI for AI, Artificial Intelligence for Agriculture Innovation. And there are 2 important components under that. One is establish what you call an agricultural data exchange platform. Right. Recently McKinsey released a report which says, about if you can release just 15 data sets in agriculture, it could unlock $65 billion potential of, worth from these use cases. So we are actually setting up a data exchange platform. And you might also be aware that we have declared 2020 as the year of AI. And it's part of that, our overall framework that we have created. So we are setting up the data exchange platform where we would make these data sets available to all the stakeholders. It could be startups, it could be research companies. And we also give an opportunity to the private sector, to the agriculture ecosystem partners to host the data. Right. So it's going to be a big game changer in the agri-tech, sector. So I think that's the way to go, platformization, as you have seen in UPI, Aadhaar, that spawn new services and products. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you again. I'll move to Mr. Manpreet Singh. Mr. Manpreet, what ma'am was saying, the platform way is the way to go. And we have seen a couple of examples like GST, Aadhaar, UPI, the kind of revolution it has bring in terms of how we handle data, how we process, and how actually it helps us in terms of the framing our policy. Behind all these, you as a tech leader, I know, because you walk at the cutting edge implementation of technology at the ground level, right? So I would like to understand from you, to set up such a platform, you need to have a very high level of agile, scalable, beneath IT platform, which can actually, take the load of the kind of data that you are feeding in every day. I mean, from that perspective, I would like to understand from you, what are the key features that as a technologist, we need to ensure that while we are actually thinking to build an IT platform for delivering government services?
Thanks, ET government, first of all, for this wonderful summit and wonderful set of participants. Really, Rama ma'am and B. Sundar sir, they talked absolutely so well about citizen services. Talking about experience of our states, it's been 10 years of my journey within e-governance in state of Punjab. I started in 2011, and I'll compare my life in 2011 with what I'm doing today. 2011, NEGP was envisaged a big way. We had e-district, state service delivery gateway, we had state portals, we have SDCs. All those infrastructure was built under NEGP. At the time, I made my first service online, and it took me almost 2 years to make that one service online. One of the few challenges which we faced during that service making online was we had to select a consultant, we had to study workflows, application forms were designed, output certificates were designed. So the whole gamut of work we did to make our first service live. 3 months back, I made my another service live on a platform, single set platform called Service Plus of Government of India, NIC. I made it online in 4 days. That's the difference which these platforms have created. That's how my life has changed. So you can imagine in 10 years how the platforms have shaped the citizen service delivery. Another example I'll give is my department of local government. Local government struggled with their, again, local government is again an NEGP project. Our state struggled with RFPs, contractual issues. We had to phase out a few vendors out of it. And then 7 years of struggle, we could not make even a single service live because of contractual issues, some issues. Then another product came in from eGov Foundation, the Nandan Nilekani Foundation, which did an MOU with our state. They have some experiences of local government in few municipalities, larger ones. They replicated the whole processes here in our state, and my state has made services live of local government, all services live within duration of 1 year. Absolutely online services, be it property tax, fire, sewerage, everything is online on that platform. So what I'm talking about is platforms are the future, as Rama ma'am and Sundar sir both talked about it. They are the futures. We at our state talk about 4 areas at a strategic level, at process level. Before we make any citizen service live, make sure process reforms happen at a very, very transformation level. We are doing our certificates, all certificates, we are transforming our certificates. Then as technology front, we are dealing with Punjab enterprise architecture. So India enterprise architecture, we're replicating. Andhra started with ePragati, and that's how it was all adopted. And we have hired consulting services for our Punjab enterprise architecture. On a data front, we have our Punjab state data policy, which has been cabinet approved by cabinet, our honorable cabinet, and we are implementing it. Again, we are talking about open data policy, e-participation policy, and we want the data to be interoperable within departments so that the real essence of technology we can all have those fruits. So I believe in nutshell we have seen success in the areas where in the public service delivery we have seen good example. Now we need to see the good examples in, just Rama ma'am told, in agriculture, health, and education. These are the 3 areas where we have to look at bigger platforms coming from either private sector or mighty government of India or NIC. Somebody, the central states has to pick up those platforms and kind of replicate it, because we have seen some failures also in terms of arm licenses. They tried for a platform, it didn't work at all, didn't work much. Then birth death certificate, almost all states have different applications for birth and death certificate. Do we need it? We have almost 20 instances of e-district or SSDG in our country. So that's where that new areas, new technologies have to be brought in so that we get into these product platforms in those really needed areas like education, agriculture, and health. And also considering the fact that states have different set of rules, policies, guidelines. If we consider those into our product building stage, requirement stage effectively well, I think products are the key going in future. That's my take on products.
Now I'll move to Dr. Lalta Mauna, Chief Information Officer and Joint Secretary, Department of Information and Communication Technology, Government of Mizoram. He is also the Chief Executive Officer for Mizoram State E-Governance Society. Dr. Lal, what we observed during the pandemic that, as other speakers have spoken, that the platform concept came quite handy, and whatever the government organization has IT platform to provide e-governance services, they were able to use those platform during the pandemic to continue their business plan, to continue delivering public services. Would you like to share your views as to how you mitigated the challenge of pandemic and how did you use platform in your state?
As far as my understanding is concerned, when we talk about National Digital Public Platform, which is actually recently central government is coming up with those existing e-governance application, which are currently running under different platform in various state government and the central government. That's they are trying to integrate it using API with Aadhaar enable UPI, DigiLockers, eSign, and eKYC. I think this concept is a good idea, integrating into a single platform. That is a very, very good idea. But as far as my experience is concerned, different states have different business rules. And we have implemented various e-governance application in each one of our states. This, the way how we need to integrate this, using API, we can integrate it. Earlier in NEGP 1.0, central government came up with National Service Delivery Gateway and State Service Delivery Gateway, through which the applications are also integrated. But recently, the central government is coming up with a concept of National Digital Public Platform, that they are trying to integrate all these applications using API with Aadhaar enable. When we talk about Aadhaar enable is unique identification and authentication, and UPI as a public payment system, and DigiLocker as issuance and verification of documents and certificate, eSign to digitally sign a document, eKYC as knowing your customer verification process, digitally using biometrics or mobile OTP. This actually we have experimenting with Umang application. That Umang we have already integrated with our e-district applications. But the question is, how many people avail those public services through Umang? That is the question, whether there is an impact in the society or the state government. That is one thing actually. For that is my perception. But the platform, when we talk about, it may be different platform, whether I use a Linux-based platform or Windows-based platform, it doesn't matter. But we can integrate it using API altogether.
Mr. Osborne, creating a single integrated platform for government organization when they are dealing with a data set of more than millions is easier said than done because risk is so huge. Based on your learning, would you like to share what approach government organizations should opt for while they are embarking on a platformization journey? I mean, some of the examples that Manpreet shared and other speaker has spoken, that indicate that there is huge potential when you actually integrate things. But there are also a challenge because in public sector, your data set is huge. I mean, your sample size is huge.
Well, thank you very much, ET, for having me on the panel today. And thank you to my fellow panelists. I think your comments have really been exciting and very informative. As we look at delivering enterprise services, that service delivery model isn't something that we start from new, right? Greenfield. We've all invested within our agencies in a great deal of legacy technology to begin with. And one of my fellow panelists earlier stated that his organization was cash strapped to do anything new. And we find this in governments around the world. So we're trying to do this transformation, changing the user experience to deliver services in new and easy ways for our citizens to consume those. But we have to recognize the investments that have been made previously. And what I see as I talk to governments around the world is really, we've created what I refer to as silos of excellence, systems of record which support the various departmental activities of an agency. It may be human resources, IT, finance, logistics, each has their own system of record, which works very well. And the employees who are delivering services within that realm of activity are very well versed with that technology. However, that's not how we deliver services to our citizens. Citizen service delivery is a cross-functional activity which encompasses all of the different data sets, which are fundamentally different in most cases from each of those systems of record. So what we see is a platform approach which allows us to aggregate information from the data within each of those systems of record. But where we failed in the past is we thought that one size would fit all. If we just adopt one platform and we migrate all of our data from these other systems into that platform, then we can do whatever we want across the agency. The problem is it's all about the data, right? So normalizing all these different data sets becomes a very expensive and time-consuming activity. So we just don't do it. Or we put a wrapper on it. We create a portal in which you can enter, and then you're actually just double-clicking into that system of record. The problem is they all act differently. They don't act the same. The applications have different functionality. So it's kind of clunky for our citizens to be able to actually navigate those. So what we're really looking for is a user experience that mimics what we use in our personal lives, where we take this platform that has aggregated information from a multitude of different systems of record, normalized only the data that's applicable to the workflow, which is delivering the service that that citizen is looking for. And we deliver that in a common way, so it's really easy to navigate. The other benefit of doing that is by normalizing the data from each of those systems of record into a common data repository in a common format. Now we can really run intelligence on that data, and each of the applications that reside in that host platform can take advantage of artificial intelligence, get predictive analytics, get a personalized experience, start to aggregate that information in a meaningful and useful way for our citizens. But it's really hard to see that vision of where we're trying to go and then realize the reality of where we are today in our government environments. But it's not that hard because we can roadmap a path to get forward by architecting this approach of normalizing data only where it's required to support the workflows, which increase that user experience for our citizens.
Absolutely, absolutely. What Mr. Osborne is saying that we need to have easy architecture while we are implementing, while we are using any set of data, that we should be able to segregate, we should be able to easily identify, then put into action. Earlier, Mr. B. Sundar, I'll come to you. You were saying that when you move to the platform, there are chances that the cost factor will be a bit high in some of the cases. And what we have observed on that part during pandemic, that there has been some challenge on the funding side. And because of that, there are a lot of prioritization happening within public sector organization. They are choosing and opting those projects which has more social value in it, something related, something which is really needed for general public. But at the same time, what we are also observing that whatever IT investment is being made, there is effort being made to ensure that though the IT infrastructure, whatever it is being built, it has to be the resilient enough. If tomorrow, let's say a COVID-like situation comes, your IT infrastructure should be able to help you provide business services, public delivery on the go, whether you needed VPN, whether you have to enable people working from home, and whatever the case may be. Mr. B. Sundar, would you like to add based on your experience as to how you look at the IT investment? There are some changes in terms of the pattern of investment that is happening in IT within public sector organization.
When we are talking about single platforms, there are two aspects to this thing. One is the architecture itself on which you are building the platforms. IG registration and stamps, they could be building on one platform. MeSeva, it is being built on the .NET platform. And we have several other departments which are building on their own platforms. A big advantage to move to a common platform or a methodology to move to a common platform will be to use open source technologies. Mr. Manpreet was mentioning about our e-Pragati experience in Andhra Pradesh. We did a very expensive mistake. We went in for proprietary software. And the problem was we got stuck with a vendor who bled us. And it took us a lot of effort, a lot of understanding to get out of this vendor locked technology and go for open source. Now, if you are seeing multiple platforms on which we are providing services, they are all done on open source, which means it is easy for any developer or UI UX professional and cybersecurity professionals to reverse engineer and provide the same kind of service in a different platform or to knit the existing platform to others. But being from NISEVA, I have a very good understanding of the .NET frame with which we develop the services. .NET, it has certain open source features and certain features, some high-end features are proprietary. So we choose what was required for us and we went about building the framework in the .NET frame. The same .NET framework is being used by the Grama Sachivalayam also, because .NET itself is a big framework which supports multiple languages, multiple platforms, multiple developers. So that way, it is easy for us to integrate all this into one monolith kind of a architecture. The second aspect is when we are building these kind of monolith architectures, it is important that you also provide redundancy in the IT chain, because if the system fails, the whole thing will collapse. So this is where the microservices architecture comes into play. Here, we divide this entire monolith into simple functional units and also provide necessary redundant, it is expensive, we provide redundancy there also, so that if one block fails, you have a parallel block to provide the same service altogether with a small latency. So architecture wise, we are all unknowingly or knowingly moving towards the microservices architecture, where our entire code, our entire modules, our entire workflows are built in neat functional units that support redundancy, albeit with a larger cost. The second is the use of appropriate technologies to deliver to the citizens. Most of the time, as Mr. Manpreet rightly pointed out, it is designing application forms, ensuring how it is uploaded into the portal, and ensuring that the certificate is safely kept in some repository and provided to the citizen or whoever it is asking on demand. Or wait for a small fee. Again, the cost comes in, and the entire system has to be user charge based, because otherwise the multiple citizen services points will not even have money for small but important things like UPS, printers, scanners. These are all some day-to-day real life situations where we face in the field. And the use of emergent technologies, I am still yet to see properly, because what we are talking, when we are talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are mainly talking about predictive analytics. We did try with some supervised learning techniques like regression. We tried some unsupervised regression techniques also for simple applications like COVID tracking. I also happen to head the Space Application Center, and most of our predictions went average. Even we were not even able to predict with 25 to 30% what in statistical language is called confidence level. And we were not even able to achieve 25 to 30%, whereas 5% is the norm in research. And so in government, we very loosely talk about A and ML, but unfortunately, the application side is a bit weak. So here maybe, and often we do not see such need for high-end analytics, because the system is so big, the government systems are so big, and the system is so resilient and versatile. You are able to handle emergent situations on the Jiffy.
Right.
These are my preliminary observations.
Before I go to Ms. Rama Devi, I'll come back to you again, Mr. Bob Osman, because Mr. Sundar has raised two very important points. One is that most of the government organization would have already invested in their existing IT infrastructure, like the enterprises has done across the world, the banks have done, and it's very difficult for them to get away with that. And many a times those investments were made in a proprietary technology. And at times it's a bit difficult to get out of that. And that is why we see a lot of push happening across the world on the open source technology, right? So that brings to a question of modernization or repurposing your existing IT infrastructure. I would like to understand from you, how do you take a balanced call wherein your sample size of application is so huge? I mean, you are dealing with the millions of data where you are providing birth certificate and a lot of other things to the people. So people are dependent. That means your ability to do a lot of experiment with the application is a bit low. Then how do you balance in terms of the modernization or maybe just retrofitting something? How do you do that? If you feel like using a Kubernetes or maybe a microservice, how do you do that? What is the best way for a public sector organization to move in such a situation?
Well, that's a great question. And I thought that, all the comments were really insightful. When I was CIO in the US government, I faced the same challenge because we had invested a great deal in legacy technologies, in a technology that made it very difficult for us to move out of. So that vendor lock is a real challenge for governments because the cost of moving out of a technology into a new technology is often prohibitive. So in many cases, we just don't do it, right? We continue with that legacy technology, even though it's past end of life. It's certainly not giving us the outcomes that we're looking for in a modern computing environment, but we've invested so heavily that it makes it almost impossible to move. So it makes it very attractive to think about an open source architecture that allows you to have the ultimate agility when it comes to technologies. However, there is a balance point because you're taking onto the government agency the requirement to make sure that you are the arbiter and the integrator of all the various technologies all the time. So when you have open source technologies that you're utilizing within your computing architecture, you have to modernize every one of those. You have to be on top of whatever the changes are and do that, which is fine if that's the way that you're going to approach it. But that's why the platform approach is so appealing to most government agencies, because they either don't have the manpower or the budget resources to do that in-house in the government any longer. So particularly in a software as a service model where you can have a subscription to a platform that gives you the maximum flexibility to integrate with the legacy technologies that are already in place and provide this evergreen opportunity of one or two releases a year of new, fresh technologies for as long as you subscribe to that becomes very appealing to most government agencies. And then it becomes a balance point for each of the IT officials to take into consideration. What do they consider vendor lock? What do they consider investment into this evergreen capabilities going forward in the overall strategy as we look 5 and 10 years into the future of where we're trying to guide the agility of our organizations to take advantage of things such as blockchain, which I heard very early in our conversation. This is going to be a super advantageous technology for us from a security perspective, particularly as we see as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we expand our computing environment into individuals' homes as we're working more remotely. These types of things allow, as I heard Manpreet say earlier, the agility to deliver a new capability, a new application on a platform. We're talking days or weeks instead of months and years. So all of this has to be balanced. And as I said earlier in my opening comments, one size doesn't fit all. And we really have to be mindful of what is the goal of the organization, where are they now in their technology investments, and then what outcomes are they looking for in the future? And then we just map a model that helps us get there as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible.
Absolutely. Ms. Ramadevi, Mr. Sundar also mentioned about moving to the microservice way of actually dealing with application and IT resources. Also, one of the point on use of machine learning and data analytics and AI, there actually you need to have a very proper and better understanding of as to what question you want to solve, what do you want to ask, right? You need to have those things, then pattern has to be put in place, and then possibly you can have some correlation. In many cases, you might not be able to get the kind of results that you are expecting. Would you like to share your views on the microservices, which we see a lot of states are doing, especially the Punjab has done a lot of work. I'll come to Manpreet on that. Your views on that?
I'll share one of our projects where it's called Samagra platform, which is in, if you translate it in English, it's called unified platform. So there's a different approach that we have been using. While as Osborne has mentioned earlier, that different departments will have legacy systems, they have their own data in different formats and so on. So we actually didn't want all the departments to go and change their systems and data formats. So what we did was we actually came up with this unified platform using again big data and machine learning. Say if the government would like to identify a targeted beneficiary to issue, it could be a ration card, it could be any government service for that matter. So there's certain eligibility criteria that we need to assess, whether a person is below the poverty line, what is his income, he or she, and so on, So what this particular platform does is it's more or less similar to what Estonia has done, which is called X-Roads, all of us know Estonia has done excellent work in e-governance. And today, just before this meeting, I had a meeting with the ambassador of Estonia who was in Hyderabad, So, well, we are partnering with them in a couple of, initiatives. Yeah, coming back to this Samagra platform, what we did was, while each individual department will have its own data, say I want to assess an individual's eligibility to issue a ration card, then I actually pull the data from different departments. Say, for example, I've applied for a BPL or a ration card. So I need to assess, whether I'm actually, below the poverty line, my income level, my caste certificates probably. So we pull data from various, for example, from the vehicle registration department, say, we pull the data, and it could be multiple sets of data, need not be by a single unique identifier. Earlier we used Aadhaar, but after the Supreme Court judgment, we actually are not using even that Aadhaar ID. So how do we actually correlate one record as a system of record, as Osborne was saying? So if we pull out what you call a golden record of a citizen from various departments. So based on, big data, we can literally find out whether, for example, I apply, do I own a 4-wheeler or a 2-wheeler? This data pertains to registration department. So, okay, if I own a 4-wheeler or 2-wheeler, that means I don't come under the BPL. That's one data point form. The second one, we pull data from the water supply department, where I'll be paying my water supply, Is it a domestic? I mean, there are various slabs for water bills. If you live in a posh area, your slab rate goes up. Based on that, you can actually assess a person's, economic status. So is the case of your electricity bill. So we pull different disparate data elements and create a system of golden record for the individual. Based on that, we assess, whatever the department or the organization would like to derive it. This is a very come up with. In fact, this is being recommended by the parliament also, in one of for their finance department or something. So having said that, another important point that I would like to mention is, I go with Osborne when he said that, as a government, all of us have seen during the pandemic, how resilient the infrastructure will have to be. So is the case with the government also. While we have our own state data SDC, state data center, and broadband connectivity, these are the two critical things apart from the front end application. Of course, we have e-office, another couple of applications. But one important point that I would like to mention it here, as a government, while our critical workloads will be hosted on cloud, on the state data center, we are actually asking departments to move to cloud, increase adoption to cloud, because we want to again, apart from again, we want to actually, as a government, get the benefits of cloud, which is increased agility, speed, elasticity, pay as per use, and so on. So in fact, we came out with a government policy mandating all the departments to move to cloud. Of course, there are certain scenarios when a department should move to cloud, like when your infrastructure is becoming obsolete. And as Osborne has mentioned, if you're actually going with a new application, new project, wherein you're going to use this, I mean, we are not just restricting it to infrastructure as a service alone, but platform as a service. If you want to actually go with a blockchain solution, AI, ML licenses, you don't need to again buy all the licenses. It could be database license. You just subscribe to it. That's the road that we are looking at. So cloud is an imperative, just not for the private sector, but for the government too.
Mr. Manpreet, what Ms. Ramadevi is saying, that cloud has become a kind of de facto platform for innovation, and most of the new thing is happening in and around cloud. And there could be a different name of that cloud. It could be public cloud, private cloud, and we are somewhere in a hybrid mode, wherein your critical IT infrastructure, critical data is hosted in a air gap type of system, and some workload which is non-serious is initially being experimented on the cloud. In Punjab, I believe that you already have a data policy in place. I think it was done in 2020 itself. And there are a lot of things happening around the microservices level, and modernization is also happening. And those two things are integral part of creating a resilient IT infrastructure. Would you like to share your views on as to how we should be building resilient IT, given the fact that we should be able to mitigate any kind of challenge posed by pandemic type of situation?
Sure, Jale. So, Sundar sir talked about the vendor lock-in. I thought Pegasus, I think Pegasus was something which Andhra was following. I'm not sure how good it has been, but he talked about a very relevant point on this vendor lock-in. We have seen Pegasus as a product globally has seen a huge success, but we have seen it's not of much success here in government services. Ma'am Rama talked about the social services. Ma'am Rama talked about the social services platform, wherein the golden ID concept of the state, she explained it. And I believe it's a platform either locally developed or EasyGov platform would be behind it, because EasyGov is also implementing a similar system across multiple states. So from both the concepts, we have a learning that, Ma'am Raman talked about social welfare schemes. So if you look at all states of the country, the social schemes are almost same. 80% will be all Government of India driven scheme, Manrega, Endervillam, be it Matrabandhu, health schemes, Ayushman Bharat, schemes are almost same, except some deviation here and there. So again, taking clue from Sundar sir and Rama ma'am, the products, we are going towards a product kind of a framework when it comes to social schemes also. That's the rightly told. In microservices under Digital Punjab, we are working closely with KPMG, which is a project consultant, and we are defining our microservices. Those microservices will be developed in-house, and those core microservices, be it small microservice like a payment or a single sign-on or set as an ID or something like those, we are developing it in-house as a microservice so that we can deploy for other departments so that they don't redo the stuff which we are doing. Coming from a resilient IT infrastructure perspective, we have seen the way pandemic has gone. State data center was conceptualized as part of national governance plan. We are expanding it fully. We have done our cloud empanelment of our vendors, so our departments are using cloud services of top vendors. The only challenge is, do we have capacity to strategize cloud versus data center? Do we have capacity in our departments to look at how to utilize cloud at its best? That's the challenge we are facing when it comes to cloud kind of adoption of cloud services. Then, from a citizen perspective, we all know rural India is the backbone. BharatNet as a project has kicked off well. It has seen changes in the last 2-3 years, but we need to see the real value which should come from BharatNet. So Government of India should step in a good effort. How do we utilize the best, the BharatNet over the fiber, which we have laid down till our village level. And then, another challenge which we face is the data sharing by different entities. We use platforms of Government of India, private platforms. So at times, like I'll give an example, our state wanted Manreka data from Government of India, MIT, or Department of Rural Development. That's a challenge. We are facing challenges in terms of getting that data back from Government of India. Still, it's our citizen data. That's the challenge our departments face when it comes to getting back their data. So platforms for sure is the future. So the learning has to come in from one state, two states, three states, and somebody has to pick up that initiative, customize it to different states or different agencies, and then launch it the way we have done it. A lot of success we have seen in pandemic. E-office is a huge, huge success. I have not cleared any file physically in the last 2 years of my here in Punjab government. All online. Every file is moving through workflow. E-office perfectly success. My honorable CM is on e-office. He talks about how he clears file in e-office. My whole minister, cabinet minister, they are on e-office. Again, that's a product platform developed by NIC. So there are success stories which we can really see right now. But the new areas, new technologies, clubbed with good set of data policy will be the sense of the future. That's my take on the overall platformization.
As other speaker have spoken, I would like to understand from you what is going to be your focus down the line in 6 months. Because what we realized that for government organization, especially after pandemic, there has been a lot of prioritization happening in terms of the IT project. And so what is going to be the IT focus for the state of Mizoram down the line in 6 months?
Actually, when we face COVID-19 pandemic, we came to realize that our current IT and communication infrastructure are not capable of handling the needs of the people, especially in communication and internet facilities. We never realized that we will require a huge bandwidth of 300 Gbps to serve the Mizoram population of 11 lakhs. From primary to college student, they require a good internet connection for online education and online examination. Moreover, to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, we have extensively used mobile phone and internet, even the remotest area. Government offices and businesses are working from home and meeting our frequently conducted online and seminar workshop are almost all are using through online only. As a government leader, for making future IT investment, we will give first priority to mobile service and broadband internet connection every home. And our second priority is to provide smart classroom in every school and colleges. And the third one is online doctor services, which is very, very important for the rural people where there is no doctors. So we are thinking of providing online doctor services and digital diagnostic center and generic medicine, that is low-cost medicine in every villages. All these services will be hosted, stored, and backup in cloud computing infrastructure. That is our priority. And we also make this vision and action plan for digital infrastructure in Mizoram by 2020 and 25. This is our, actually during the line of 6 months, we are trying to helping the people through digital infrastructures. That is what we are planning to do. We have already got an action plan according to our visions and policies. That's government of Mizoram is taking care of those difficulty.
Mr. Bob, based on what I could collect from our speaker, I would like to ask you, during the pandemic, what we observed, maybe a classical upgradation of as to how you should be handling the workflow for your organization. I mean, people had some level of IT applications, some of them, especially in the government department, they already have some IT and they were using it. For example, there was some integrated command and control center, mostly used by municipal administration and smart cities. to deliver different kind of services like traffic management for other things. But during the pandemic, what we noticed that those infrastructure were used for delivering emergency services by even healthcare department. So a lot of repurposing of IT infrastructure happened during the pandemic. So one, on the workflow part, as to why it is important to have a very easy method of workflow, which should be agile and scalable and should be able to meet any requirement. Second, within public sector, what Mr. Manpreet raised, that many a times you do not have the capacity to understand and to possibly time to analyze whether you should push this thing on the cloud or in the public cloud, or you should put it on within your own data center, right? And because for public sector organization, their main task is not to basically manage IT. Their task is to deliver government services. Their task is to deliver delightful experience to the people. In such a situation, how do you handle these two things? Once, the capacity part of the government organization. Second, how do you create a workflow system which is agile and scalable?
Well, those are great questions, which really address what we, in the initial parts of the pandemic, found ourselves faced with. So most organizations felt that they understood what the workflow was associated with delivering a particular service and which applications needed to be used to deliver that service to the end consumer. But when we distributed our workforce very suddenly and we expanded the computing environment, we realized that many of the activities within the workflow were being done manually. They were being done word of mouth. You know, Manpreet would walk down to my cubicle and ask me for, how would we apply this particular legislation to this request for this service that was being requested. I'd give him the answer and he would go off and deal with that. We lost that capability in many cases, which we very quickly recaptured via chat functions on the platforms that we adopted to connect people who were dispersed physically. So we learned that we had a lot of tribal knowledge that was going on in service delivery across our agencies. And now we've captured that knowledge. This is huge for us because we can now automate many of the lower level functions that don't require human decision-making. We can elevate the human decision-making to the appropriate activity within a workflow, and we can augment that decision with artificial intelligence to give contextual data to enhance the response of that human in that activity of a workflow. So that really gave us this ability to provide richer, better services, even though we were faced with this dispersed workforce during the pandemic. However, architecturally, that became a different challenge to your first question, which is how do you scale to deliver those types of capabilities when you have all these disparate data sets? And again, what we found were those government agencies who had embarked upon a digital strategy to move into a hybrid environment where some of the workload was conducted in government data centers and some of the workload was in a commercial cloud service provider, particularly if one was a software as a service platform type of a capability. They ended up with the best of both worlds because now you could start to curate the workflow in between the on-premise capabilities of the legacy technologies and those high security requirements of protected information with the very easy to use, agile, very configurable workflow-based applications of the cloud platform. The challenge then became, and we're working through this now, and there are various levels of maturity in the adoption of this philosophy of the hybrid workplace, the hybrid computing environment, and how you manage that workflow as appropriate. But again, the pandemic has helped us to identify that because there are some activities that we discovered in each of our agencies where we still needed people to go into a physical building to conduct the activities of the government. But many of those routine office functions could be exported into the home. The work could be conducted through a VPN, a secure connection, authentication capabilities. This is where I get excited about the blockchain technology because it'll make all this automatic in the future as we adopt that. But it created the environment for us to now have a different way of looking at how we conduct work to deliver citizen services across the agencies within our government. Whether we have shared data, which is really hard to do because we've grown up organically over time. Each government agency created systems or purchased technologies with data models which were kind of set within that technology, and then we grew organically with these systems of record within that functional area. And that makes it hard to integrate that, right? And it's expensive and it takes time, and those interfaces to do that become brittle and very hard to maintain. So the more that we can move the data that's appropriate to support these workflows that I described earlier in a hybrid environment between on-prem and in the cloud, the more flexible and agile that we become. We've heard some great examples from Manpreet about the speed of delivering capabilities. COVID has exploded that, right? So the organizations in our governments around the world who were able to take advantage of the agility of a platform were able to avoid one of the challenges of your second question. And that is, we have to make sure that we're protecting citizen data at all times. So there are security requirements around certain types of information that oftentimes in emergent situations, we would break protocol, right? We just wanted to get that service done. We wanted our emergency services to be able to take advantage of the information, deliver the capability to the citizens when they need it, and we'll fix all the rules that we broke later, right? Well, now you don't have to do that, because if you're already on a platform that's certified and accredited within your computing environment, and you spin up a new application in 4 or 5 days, it's already certified and accredited in your environment. Now you have this agility to deliver a new capability very quickly that's secure out of the box. That's an exciting way to go forward. And I'm really excited to see how governments such as yours are going to take us in the future.
Right. Absolutely. Mr. B. Sundar, Mr. Manpreet Singh, Ms. Rama Devi, Mr. Bob Osman, thank you so much for your time. You all spoke quite well on strengthening government IT backbone through modern and future-proof single platform. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you everyone for sharing your inputs.